All right, today we're going to talk about how to switch levels. So I've loaded up lesson 15 and changed the title to lesson 16 and the description to levels and title win lose. I'm using my HUD function to store some of the variables that don't really apply to a certain level, but they're more global. So I'm going to add 3 variables here. One is map x. I'm going to set that to be 0. There's map y. I'm going to set that to be 0 as well. And then goal, I'm going to set that to be 5. Map x and map y tell me the upper left-hand corner of whatever map I'm using. So if I'm using this map, it's going to tell me this upper left-hand corner here, which so far has been 0, 0, but it's going to be changing as we add more levels to the map. It won't be 0, 0 anymore. It'll be more like 30, 0, or wherever I am on the map. I noticed that when I was testing my levels, I actually need to use this map x and map y in my tile at function. And this is because when we're finding collisions, we don't want to always start from 0, 0. We want to start from the upper left-hand corner of whatever map we're using. So I'm just going to add in HUD dot map x plus that value and HUD dot map y plus that value. And that'll just offset everything based on the current map that we're using. All right, I'm going to go back up to my TIC function. And we're going to add a couple things in here. So I'm going to, instead of doing 0, 0, I'm going to do map x and map y when I'm drawing my map, so that whichever map I'm using, it'll automatically know. I'm going to add some room. I'm going to start dividing out into levels now. So I'm going to say if HUD.level, which we have, if I scroll up into HUD, I have this level here. I'm actually going to change that to start at 0. That's going to be my title screen. Okay, so if HUD.level equals 0, then I'm going to call a function that I'm going to call title. We'll make that later. And then else if HUD.level equals 5, however many levels you're going to have, do one more than that, and that can be like your win screen. Then we're going to call a function that I'm going to call win. We'll add that later. Whoops, I shouldn't have ended this here because I have an if, else if, and then I'm actually also going to have an else. And the else is going to be all this stuff down here. That's going to be inside the else. So either we are in the title screen, or we're in the win screen, or we are doing one of the levels where we're drawing our enemies and checking all this stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to need to end that if. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just indent all of this stuff one more time because I'm noticing that it's only indented one level. So I'm going to go into my initialize function, and we're going to do a lot more code in here. I'm going to start by thinking about what I want to reset in each level when I restart a level or when I go to a new level. So there are several things that I want to kind of zero out. The first one is the score. That should reset if I use up all my lives, or if I go to the next level, I want my score to reset. Any fruits that I have on my screen, I'm going to reset that. the enemies that I have on my screen. I'm going to reset those. If I don't, I'm going to add up with double, triple, quadruple the number of fruits and enemies that I had before. And I'm going to clear out any slimes that Blobby might be holding. Next, I'm going to set up sections for each level, and the title screen is going to be one of those levels. I'm going to say if HUD.level equals 0, which is going to be my title screen, then I want to set HUD.mapX and HUD.mapY. So if I go into my map editor, I can use this eyeball to look at the big map. I've been so far just sticking with level 1, but I also have made a level 2, 3, 4. This is going to be my title scene. I'm going to put some text in front of it just to make it, I decorated it to make it a little bit more interesting. I have a lose scene and a win scene. So this is as simple as it gets. One kind of simple background for each of these things. And I'll show you a little bit later a little bit more complicated example. I want to use this map down here. And if I look at the upper, I think I have to be in this little pencil thing. If I look in the upper left-hand corner, my X is going to be 0 and my Y will be 119. So I'm going to go back to the code. And I'm going to say X is 0 and Y is 119. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing for each level. Some levels will have a little bit more information. So this should be an else if here. So else if my level is equal to 1, so my level 1, then I want to use 0, 0 as my map because that's in the very upper left-hand corner. In each level, I want to set my goal. So my HUD.goal. And for level 1, I want it to be 5. So that's the score that I want to get in order to move on to the next level. I want to set Blobby's starting position. And I'm going to set both the spawn X and spawn Y and the X and Y. So the spawn X and spawn Y are going to be where Blobby will go back to if you use up all your lives. And then the X and Y is just his actual location. So I'm going to have blobby.spawnX, blobby.spawnY, blobby.x, and blobby.y. And this will vary by level. For my current level, it's 230 and 103 is what I figured out, where I want my character to start out. And then I'm going to reset the lives to 3. And then I'm going to set up whatever else I want for that level. And in this level, I am only going to collect fruits. So I'm going to use my set fruits here. I'm going to not use these enemies. I won't have any enemies in this level. And that's all I need for level 1. And I'm going to do something very similar for level 2. So I'm going to say if the level is 2, then I want to change my map location. So if I look in my map, this is my level 2 map. And if I look in the upper left-hand corner, it's going to be 0, 17. So each map vertically is offset by 17. Each map horizontally is offset by 30. So my map Y vertical change was 17. For this level, I'm going to make my goal to collect 10 fruits. I'm going to change my blobby location to 40 and 80. Oops. So more toward the middle, left middle of the screen. My lives I'm still going to reset to 3, and this time I'm going to add 15 fruits. So I'm going to have a few extra. And I'm also going to add enemies. So on this one, I'm going to do a drop enemy. I'm actually going to add a few different drop enemies, and I did something a little bit complicated. So I'll show you that in a minute. But really, I just need to set where my enemy is going to start. So, and what costume he's going to have. So in my sprites, in my foreground, I decided I was going to do the pig is going to be dropping from the sky, and he's 384. And then my X and Y of where he starts and the kind of motion that he's going to have, and I decided he's going to drop. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this a few times. Add like 4 of these. And I'm going to vary this X starting position so they're spaced out a little bit. Like maybe 20, maybe like 60, and something like 110 or something like that. You can also vary this to kind of have them come in at different times. Something like that. So let me take a step back and show you the more complicated example and kind of like where you might be going with something like this. So if I look in my initialize function, I've actually added in my intro screen, I've actually added some characters. So I've given Blobby a starting point, I've added a couple enemies, I've added some of my fruits in there, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So if I run this, you can see that I have my characters and my fruits and some text. And then level 1 is pretty much what I already showed you, nothing super fancy there. In level 2, I added some randomness to where the enemies would spawn in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction. So I have selected some kind of widths for each enemy to spawn in. I've also chosen a random Y value so that when it spawns in, it'll take more or less time to kind of come down, just to add a little bit more unpredictability. Okay, and that's it for level 2. I also added a level 3 that has like some marching going on, and I added a level 4 that has an AI enemy, so you can kind of see how the difficulty level can kind of ramp up. But you'll notice that we're always setting the HUD values, we're always giving Blobby some stuff, and then you might have some objects or enemies or both in each level. And then the last level is the wind screen. And I've decided to add some enemies to my wind screen to make it a little bit more interesting. But really all you need is, oh, and I also added my character in there. But really all you need is where your map is. Okay, and mine, I'm setting the X a little bit differently. So I'll show you what that looks like in a more plain version in a minute. So let me just show you what these levels look like and how I can navigate. So when I run my code, I have kind of not an Easter egg really, but just kind of some secret controls that I have. I can press any of the numbers on the keyboard to get to that level. So if I press 1, that'll bring me to my level 1. If I run it again and press 2, that brings me to my level 2. I have a lose screen. So this is actually kind of a glitch. I shouldn't be losing all 3 of my lives all at once. That has to do with my spawn point being the same as my starting point. So I'm going to have to change that for level 2. Level 3, I have some marching, and then my spawn point and my or my starting point and my spawn point are different so that when I stand there, I'm not just still getting killed all the time. And then level 4, that's my AI. It's following me around and I can smash it. Anyway, then I have to collect a certain amount of coins and then I win. So this win screen is more fancy than what you need, but I'll show you what that looks like. Now, another thing that I'm going to do with my drop function, or my drop action, is when the enemy falls off the screen, I'm just going to have it respawn back up at the top. So if I go into move drop, instead of having sprite.active equal false, I'm going to say sprite.y equals, and then some vertical amount. So I'm just going to maybe say -10 or something. So then it'll start back up at the top of the screen. Okay, so let me go back into my initialize. So we have level 0, we have level 1, we have level 2. I'm going to stop there, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the win scene. So I'm just going to do the same beginning here. And it's just going to be whatever the next one is. So this would be 3. Then I want to go to my win map, which is 60 and 119. And then I can end my if statement. So notice that I haven't actually drawn anything in here, because here we're just setting up our initial kind of parameters, and then in each of the functions that we call in the TIC function is where the drawing is going to happen. So this title is going to do some drawing, win is going to do some drawing, and then here, when we're doing our levels, we have a lot of drawing going on. So I remember I'm not going to do all of my levels for this example, so my win level is actually level 3 right now. All right, let's make our title function. So I'm going to go to the end of my code. Looks like I'm at 537. And I've already started a title function, it looks like. So in this title function, I want to draw anything that needs to be drawn on the map. So if I've added any objects or enemies or characters to make things more interesting, I need to make sure that that gets drawn here. So you might call like draw fruits or draw enemies or draw blobby, whatever it might be. I'm going to keep it simple and just do some text, the basic text, and then I'll show you what mine looks like. So I'm going to do a print statement. In this print statement, I want you to put in your title. You would have your X value, whatever it might be. You have to play around with the numbers. I'll just put in some for now. And you can do a color if you want. Remember, you can get the color from in here. Maybe I'll do pink, so that'll be 3. And then I want you to do your commands. So you might do something like left, right, arrows to move, up arrow to jump, and Z to throw projectiles, something like that. And then something like press A to start. I'm going to use the A key on the keyboard to start the code. And you would want to add in your location here and your color if you wanted. I'm just going to leave it blank. So when I run my code, it looks like this is a little bit too far to the right. So I would play around with that to get it all lined up how I want. Okay, so if I run my code now, I can see that I need to play around with this a little bit more. I'm also noticing that my background isn't drawing correctly. So when I look at my TIC function, I'm going to look at my map, and I'm noticing that I do not have HUD dot in front of each of these map X and map Y because I didn't have a value for map X and map Y. It was just using 0, which would be my first map up here. So it was just using this map and it was never using this map. They're not very different, but the rocks are in a different place and I don't have platforms in my title screen. Okay, so this is looking better. So this is my title screen background. Let me show you a couple interesting things that you can do with text. So if I run my code, you can see that my text, I have a really big text, and then I have the condensed text and then normal text. So I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to go to my title. Okay, so you can see in my title screen, I've drawn some of my characters. I've done some kind of fancy math. We talked about this before, how you can get the width of a piece of text and save it by doing the print command and then setting it equal to a variable. And then you can use that width to center your text. So 120 is the center of the screen, and then you subtract the width divided by 2. This is a little bit fancier because I made the text bigger. So you have your text, you have your x value or x coordinate, your y coordinate, your color, something that I'm not using, I don't really remember what that was, and then this is the size of the text. So if you set it to 2, it'll be twice as big, 3, it'll be 3 times as big, and then because I did that, I had to multiply the width by 3, so that's what that was, and then it was just off by a little bit. For each of these, I have a rectangle as a background, and then text, rectangle as a background, and then the text. Here, I did this true at the end is the collapse. Is the text collapsed true or false? So I have my text, I have my x value, y value, color, something that I don't remember that's always false, scale, which I'm just keeping at 1 this time, and then true to collapse the text. And then the next thing we're going to do is add some if-elses that'll allow us to go into each level to do testing so that you don't have to go through level 1 to get to level 2. In our title function, we are going to add some if-elses that will allow us to jump to any level that we want. For level 1, I'm going to do both the number 1 and a mapped button. And that is because if people play this on something that has like a controller, only special keyboard keys are mapped, A, S, Z, X, and the arrow keys. So we want to stick with those as much as possible. So for me, as I'm testing, I can use the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get to any level, including the windscreen. So let's go ahead and code that up. So we're going to say if button, and then that button was 6, I think, 6 for the A. And this returns true. So if we're saying if this button is pressed, then it will be true. Or we can do a key and the number that corresponds to the number 1 is 28. So if either of those buttons are pressed, we want to set the HUD level to 1, and we want to initialize. We want to make sure we set this value to true so that we will be able to run the initialize function. And then there's going to be a lot of else ifs that are basically the same thing, so I'm just going to copy paste this. So this time I don't need a button, I just need the next key in the list, and it just goes up by 1. So 2 is going to be 29, 3 will be 30, etc., etc. So for level 2, we want to set to level 2 and then initialize as true, and this should be an else if. And then for level 3, it's going to be key 30, level 3, and initialize as true. And that level 3 is going to be my win. And now we can end. And if I was going to add more levels, I would just copy paste and add in whatever I needed to. So now if I run my code, from here I should be able to press the A or the number 1 in order to load up level 1. So I'll try A, that works. I'll rerun and try 1, and that works. Let me try level 2, and I can go directly into level 2. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun and try level 3, and it shouldn't work because I haven't actually done anything there yet. So I'm trying to call the win function, but I haven't actually created it yet. So let's do that. So we're going to write a function called win. This is where you would add text, add characters, make your win function a little bit more interesting. You should at least say something like Control R to play again. Okay, so I'm going to run my code. I'm going to hit number 3 for the win screen. Oh, I forgot to put this in a nice place, but you get the idea. You can move that around wherever you want, and it says that I win, and I can Control R and play again. For mine, I did some fanciness with the map, because in my map I did several different versions of the UN so that it would cycle through them. And in the code, that is a mod. So the 8 is how many things I had, and then I slowed it down a little bit by doing 80 divided by 10, and then the 30 is because the width of each map is 30, so you have to multiply that amount by that 30. So this is my map X, and that's why I didn't have a map X originally in the initialize, I think. Oh, yeah, here. So in my win, I just had my map Y, and in my win function, I set my map X. And then I drew my character and some enemies. So I have my character, my enemies, my Control R to play again. Okay, so then we want to also do something when somebody loses. So let's go ahead and do our lose function. Sometimes restarting the level happens too fast, so this helps slow it down so that the user has control of when the level restarts. So for the lose function, what you want to do is draw your map. So if you find your lose screen's upper left-hand corner, so minus 30, 119. That's going to be your X and Y, and then you do the width and height, so 30 and 17. And then I'm going to print a message that says, press A to try again. And then I'm going to do an if statement that says, if button 6 was pressed, then I want to set that init variable to true so that it allows the initialize function to run. And that will reset the level. Nothing will happen yet because I haven't called this lose function. So let's go back up into TIC and add something down here at the bottom that says if Blobby's lives are less than or equal to 0, and it should never be less than 0, but sometimes it'll hop right over the 0 and go into the negative. So if you do equals 0, sometimes it'll miss it. Then we want to call the lose function. And then I also want to go into my check limits function. And right now, I don't have anything happening if Blobby falls through the bottom of the screen. I had taken that out because I had the floor in there. But now in my game, I'm allowing him to fall through the floor sometimes. So I'm going to go ahead and say if blobby.y is greater than 130 or so, that'll be off the screen. Then instead of doing anything with blobby, I want to just call the lose function. Let's try running that. See if I can get rid of all my lives here. There we go. Okay, so I got rid of all my lives, and then I'm at my lose screen. So hopefully A will let me reload level 2. Yes, so I reloaded level 2, and then I can do the whole thing again. Next, let's allow the levels to advance. Right now we have a bunch of levels, but there's no way to get from level 1 to level 2. So what we're going to do is go back up into the TIC function again, back down where we just did the blobby lives thing. Underneath that, we're going to say if we have scored enough, so if HUD.score is greater than or equal to our goal, then we're going to add 1 to the level, and we're going to initialize so that we can load the next level. So init equals true. And then I can end that if. All right, so let's see if we can advance. I'm just going to press A to start. I'm in level 1. All I need to do is collect all my fruits here. Okay, and there's level 2. So I believe that is everything we need. Make sure that you are making your own levels, deciding how you want your game to work. Make sure that you include a title screen with instructions for what keys work. All right, let's make sure we save. I'm going to do a save lesson 16. I'm also going to download it. All right. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how to add music and sound effects. So we'll see you then.